Hey guys, welcome back to Enlightened Turtle. It's your host Kev here. Now, I was supposed to be getting the video out regarding the flood like today or over the weekend. However, there's more information that I wanted to check out and it took a little bit longer than I thought. So that probably won't get out till next week now. However, I thought I'd take this opportunity to take a look at some of the topography of the two elements, well, the two locations that are the main locations for the Trojan War. Obviously on the screen now you can see Anatolia. This water here, this is the Dardanelles, the Straits of the Dardanelles, and this here in the middle is ancient Troy. Now this is the Troy obviously of Henrik Schliemann, where he turned up, basically blew a hole in the citadel and done some excavating there, and he believed it was ancient Troy. Now, I used to have no reason to disagree with Schliemann, to be honest. I mean, I've seen the documentary where he walks around with the small notebook size version of the Iliad, trying to tie everything in as he's walking around. However, until I came across this book, which is Iman Wilkens, who has really opened my mind to a whole different potentiality on many elements of history really, but obviously the Trojan War. So that was a long introduction, my apologies. Like I say, I wanted to do that flood video. Unfortunately we never got there this week, so hopefully that'll be out next week. So there's a number of rivers attributed to the Trojan War. You've got the Scamander, the Skian, I think it is, the river Exes and all this kind of stuff. Loads of different rivers. And this long river here on the left side of the city would have been the Scamander. And like I say, I think the other one was the Skian River, which the camp of the Trojan, the Achaeans, was in between. And those two rivers, I think it was these two, conjoin, and where these conjoin, that's supposed to be where the city of Troy was. So this area, it's claimed, would have been the plain or the battlefield between the two nations, well, multiple nations, the two armies. So let's go back to the satellite view. So if we scroll down, as you can see, this is the alleged citadel of Troy here, and we've got the walls going around. Now there's many different reasons why some people would say this isn't the city of the Trojan conflict, and we'll come on to a couple of those, but I'll save them for an archaeological video and a topographical video. This is more like just a quick map rundown. However, if we go to this image here, as you can see, these are the different layers and the different strata layers for the different periods of which the Trojan conflict allegedly took place. Excuse me. And as you can see, you've got 500 BC, 85 BC to 500 AD, going all the way back to 2500, 2400 BC, which is 4,500 years ago. Now, obviously, one of the big issues about this location as well is, I discussed this in a previous video, is Ilus, who was the founder of the city of Troy, or Ilum, who we shall come on to in a moment. He allegedly founded the city after, I believe he won some kind of a wrestling competition over in Phrygia, travelled there from Crete allegedly, got involved with a king that was on the mainland in Anatolia. One thing led to another, he won a competition and his prize was basically wherever a prized cow, and I do believe he set the cow off on a journey, and wherever the cow stopped, that's where he'd found the city of Ilum. Excuse me. Now, as you can see, there's a problem with that. If the place is being occupied and had continuous occupation and reconstruction going back, well, let's put it this way, some people believe that this location was the Trojan War around 650 BCE. Others still maintain it's up to 1200 BCE. However, that would still leave almost 1500 years conservatively of occupation. And indeed, the treasure that Schliemann found, where he called, I think he called it, was it Helen's treasure or something like that. I'll put an image on the screen. It was like all the gold, found a load of gold. But the problem with that is when it was dated to nowhere near 650 BCE. Indeed, it wasn't even dated to close to 1100. It was actually allegedly a lot older. If you look directly north of Troy here, there's a place called the Varna Necropolis. Now, the Varna Necropolis, believe it or not, like I say, found here in Bulgaria, has the largest ancient hoard of gold objects. Like the king who was buried in this area of Bulgaria, like there's so much gold, and it goes back several thousand years BC, like way before any potential Trojan conflict. The general location, as you can see, it's quite arid and dusty. The area is a lot cooler these days than it used to be. So we have Cambridge here, and we're going to take a closer look now. We're going to see the Gog-Magog Downs and the Ida Hills, etc. And this area here, from King's Lynn around to like Boston, imagine a half moon, this is where the Wash used to come into, and this body of water is known as the Wash. Now, there's a few anomalies we're going to take a look at round there in a moment when we get to it. But first, let's get back to Cambridge. This is a little bit promptu, this video as well, so apologies if it's a little all over the place. There's B. Abraham. We've done a little bit of looking into this area. If anyone's seen the Gog-Magog video, we've seen the connections between the line of Abraham and Gog-Magog was, what was the right word? He was subservient to Abraham and his ancestry all the way down. Whether Gog-Magog giants were around in the time of Abraham is a different story altogether. But then if you were to believe the scripture, then people like Abraham lived longer lives back then. So if people lived longer lives, maybe there was giants and the world was a totally different place, who knows. However, let's not get tied up into all that. But there's the location of B. Abraham, and it follows B. Abraham Road, and that goes straight past this location, Wandlebury Hill. This Wandlebury Hill is a very interesting location. Again, people like Iman Wilkens have stated that he believes this is where ancient Elam was, and we're going to look at the topography a little more in a moment, as the height, the lay of the land and stuff like that. But there's many things that's mentioned in the topography that supports this area. Number one being the springs, the many springs on Ida, the fountains, the flow of water that fed the city and the surrounding areas. And if we just zoom out a little bit and come, sorry, we're on the wrong map. If we come to this map, oh, jumping ahead of ourselves. Cherry Hinton, that's a place that's referenced here. Cherry Hinton, Coldham Brooks. So a number of locations around here are discussed in this book. We're not going to go through all of them. As you can see with these little triangles on the map as well, these are trig points for elevation. So you've got a number of smaller hills around the area. I wish there was like a map showing you the springs. Unfortunately, finding the springs was a little bit more difficult, but they are there. There's plenty of them. Now, if we take a little look, we have From down here in the west we have Money Hill, southwest we have Newton High Point, we have Clunch Pit Hill, St Margaret's Mount, Fox Hill, Clark's Hill, White Hill, Little Trees, Signal Hill. So this circle in the middle and this almost rectangular wall going around it will become more clearer in a moment. However, this is allegedly the citadel of ancient Elam, ancient Troy, according most notably to Iman Wilkens. Sorry, just let me take a sip of my honey water. Yes, this is believed to be the citadel and a potential wall going around where maybe, you know, small occupation like a tavern, residencies of like just the working classes and the families of the noble, you know, and the citadel being where like King Priam, Alexander, Hector, these kind of people would have stayed in the safest part. One thing I've got to mention here as well is I've done a number of videos on the hills around Liverpool, you know, been to Billinge, Up Holland, excuse me, and one of the things that was very interesting when I get to these places, well, there's two things. One, there's always a quarry around the top of these hills. Even when I visited Boar's Den and the Fairy Glen, as we were walking along the river, around, well, the stream where the Fairy Glen was, we seen what looked like quarried wall, like at the elevations and stuff like that, cut bricks, which makes you think that it probably was a quarry. And the other thing that I find when you go to these locations, and they're not even always on maps, like if you go to Up Holland and type in on Google Maps golf courses, the golf course which I'm thinking of in my mind is not on, it doesn't pop up on Google Maps. Well, it didn't last time we done a search, and it's the same for Billinge. However, the golf courses are basically situated on the elevations. Now, if we go and take a look at this Wandlebury Country Park, the potential, like I say, Trojan city or settlement, we find right next to it all this disturbance to the ground, obviously being a golf course, which is frustrating really, because we're going to come on to look at the Lidar imagery in a moment, and you're going to see the ground as being extremely unsettled. You know, you've got fairways, bunkers, greens, like all these, like say, bunkers with sand dunes and things like that. So they've really destroyed whatever chance and whatever hope there was of doing archaeology on that area, which is a large area. Doesn't look so big on the map, but when we zoom in, like this building here, this is a manor house, and I'm not too sure if this is oh, it's got benches here, so it looks like you can walk through. It is a park, obviously, and I will be going to this area at some point next year to check it out. As you can see, it says Wandlebury Ring, Iron Age Hill Fort, and there is, if you take a quick look online, allegedly older archaeological things, you know, like ramparts and things like that, which we'll discuss in a moment. So, like I said, I really want to get to this area and check it out for myself. I can't imagine there'd be too much visibly there anymore, but it'd be nice to take it in and get a feel of the place. Just briefly as well, like I say, this Bar Abraham, if you come up here as well, there's a place, once I flip this over to the street view, aerial photography, it looks like a giant amphitheatre. It's Bar Abraham car park, and it just makes me think of a giant Roman amphitheatre. Not to say that it is, but it just makes me think that way. So as you can see, this Wandlebury Ring is situated on the high elevation of the area. If I zoom out even further, as you can see, look at that, and this is overlooking the plain, which we'll come on to in a moment. And this area here is believed to be like the Eider Hills. So if we come back down to Wandlebury Hill, even now you can see the major disturbances in the ground. Now, could this ring here, as I say, be the citadel where you'd have the strongest wall, if it was a wall, potentially, who knows? And this area around it would be your exterior wall for the citadel, you know, but still protected. And then we've got more disturbance on the hill over here. Now, it makes sense to me that on this side you would have you know, people living there, a settlement. A settlement is more than just a keep, it's the people who are protected by the castle and the king or whoever it is. And also we find in the mythology that I think it was Idomeneus was Priam's father, and he got into all kinds of trouble. He got into trouble with Poseidon, who allegedly built a wall for the city, but didn't pay him, didn't give him his tribute, and then he incurred Poseidon's wrath a couple of times during the conflict. However, obviously not him, but his ancestors or descendants. And also Hercules attacked the Troad, and he carried off his daughter Hesione, who was Priam's sister, and even died at the hands of Achilles. On the back of this, Priam allegedly did some extra works around the city of Troy to build up its defences, and also he had a larger garrison placed there. So one would think all that would be situated pretty much on this hill. So we'll go back now and look at the hillshade. So as you can see now, a number of features pop out more clearly in the land with this Lidar image. And if we just look at the golf course real quick, you know, we see so many square shapes, rectangular shapes. Obviously you've got ovals and bends, but it's very hard to discern what any of this is. Even if we were looking at actual like homesteads on this side of the hill, you know, we could have like metalworking over here, you know, small bits of farm, you know, storage, all this kind of stuff could be on this side of the Gog-Magog hills, a marketplace, anything like that. And as I say, if you can only zoom in so much, but we do see so many shapes and structures that I'm going to flip between the two sets of images now, just so we can see some of the differences. For example, if we look in the middle of the screen, we've got 3 square shapes here, even a rectangular shape here, and then an arch. So let's just take a little look on the aerial photography. As you say, you can't really tell. It just seems like mounds or some kind of elevation, but then again, I don't know if this is just off the golf course. There's literally no way to discern, unless you were there and you could tell in real time like what it is you're looking at with this imagery as well. So we'll go back to the hillshade. So let's take a look at this Wonderberry hill. As you can see, there's a large ditch going all the way around, which for me, if we are talking about a Bronze Age Trojan conflict of Celtic origin going back around 3,000 years, you will not find a giant walled city in Britain. Not that I'm aware of. Potentially, according to some people, like say, according to like Comey and Beaumont, if you go into Edinburgh, you go to York, Lincolnshire, Salisbury, a lot of these places are ancient cities, capitals of the ancient world, Babylon and all this kind of stuff. But that we're not going there today. Like I say, it's most likely going to be a hill fort with ramparts, earthworks, you know, natural defences, giant pits with spikes in it and stuff like that. It's very rare you'd get a bricked structure or a stone structure in this period. It seems it's different obviously over in Mesopotamia. If you go over to the Mesopotamia, the Tigris, Euphrates, you know, all these cities in between there. Well, when it comes again to like the flood video, if I go back onto the maps, just scroll out slightly, we obviously have this area where we have hypothesized expulsions of people, basically the cradle of civilization. So it's only natural that they would follow the way south into the warmer lands, and then this is where you see basically the most ancient cities in the world, because they were probably the longest occupied after the flood. Now, as I say, so we've got this large ditch going around, which is obviously defensive, well, in my mind anyway. And then we have what looks like another perimeter ditch going around. Now, is it a potential that this could have been like a wall in antiquity and another wall here? Who knows? Unfortunately, you can't really tell off these images, and a lot of the stonework has disappeared, if it was. And I'd like to know, this London stone is said to be brought to Britain, according to like Wilson and Blackett, from the Eastern Mediterranean, from Hissarlik. They were meant to have gone there, collected this stone, and, or I do believe actually, now that I think about it, one of the other survivors took the stone with them. There's a lot of different contriving stories around the conflict and what happened afterwards itself. However, this stone was meant to have been the founding stone that was used in Trinobantum, in the New Troy, which became London. Excuse me. So this stone still exists. It's still in London to this day. So I want to know, what's the composition of this stone? Like, whereabouts in the world does it come from? Because through like geological techniques now, we can find out where it was quarried. So it'd be very interesting to know where this stone was quarried. Is it from Turkey or is it from Great Britain? That's the question. As you can see as well, we have a number of ringed structures like this with trees on them in the middle of the farmers' fields, which is normally a sign to me that something's awry, because I don't know whether it's law that people have got to have a certain amount of trees on the land. However, I find it, and I get it for the wildlife purposes, however, this is an area of which, if you found a slight mound in a circle and it's a potential location of where Troy is, for me that's most likely a tumulus or a barrow, and probably needs excavating so we could find out. Now, we've got these two structures, as I say, here, and there's lots of them in this part of the world. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if we go back to the hillshade composition, as you can see, they are clearly defined. Unfortunately, you can only get so close. These are clearly defined. Are they barrows? Are they just sets of trees in the middle of a farmer's field? I don't know. I want to get there and take a look myself. As with pointing out over in Hissarlik before, we had the plain between the two rivers, which was believed where the conflict took place. Now, if we take a look here, we can see this river on the left running through Spalding, and we have this river on the right running through King's Lynn. So one would say this would be the area. Obviously, there's a lot of area here that has been destroyed and washed away. That's why it's known as the Wash. Now, the reason behind this, I'll put the quotes on the screen for you now. In the Iliad, apparently Poseidon and Apollo had already made their mind up to, had made their mind up to destroy the Achaean wall. Now the Achaean wall was supposed to be as strong as the Trojan wall, which was obviously attacked several times. The Trojans eventually got to the ships and set fire to the ships, and in turn brought Achilles back into the fray. And however, skip forward, once the conflict was over, this area was allegedly up to eight rivers were fused together, and then a torrent flushed away the entire Achaean camp. And the word used is flood, which is one of the reasons why I decided to make a flood video, to be honest, when I came across this, because I was like, I keep coming across this word, you know, synchronicity. Perhaps I need to look into it and check it out a little bit. So this, like I say, this is the area where between the two cities, there's Cambridge, the Gog-Magog Downs here just south of Cambridge. And as you can see here, you've got the natural defence of the river, and the rivers wind out and go off into different directions. So you've got natural defences from the rivers, and then you've got these massive war dikes stretching out across the plain, and they seem to be strategically positioned on angles in between rivers, elevations and stuff like that, as we shall see now when I go on to this elevation map. As you can see here, this is the plain on which the battle would have commenced, the great plain of the Trojan conflict. We've got the higher elevations on either side, and there's a number of rivers running through here. They're not clearly distinguished. As you can see there, here's a couple of the dikes, and there's several dikes, to be fair. They're not all visible on this image. Now I'm going to leave that there. Like I say, we've done a quick overview. Wandlebury Hill, Hissarlik. I just want to go into one or two things that I'd spotted for myself. So whilst having a whip around this area, one thing that stood out to me like a sore thumb was this little floater here. I was like, what on earth is that? There's no, if you go into Google Maps and scroll back out, as you can see on Google Maps, there's absolutely no information available, which is preposterous. How is that even possible? You've got this very interesting object here, circular, seems to be like a giant tumulus or ancient grave, if you will, barrow. We've got this other circular structure here, which I'm not too sure what this is. That looks to me actually like that's for horse training, that, which is something else we haven't discussed really on this channel, is the horses and how horses were used in the Trojan War. Isn't it a coincidence that this part of Britain is like the epicenter of where equestrian horse training and all that kind of stuff takes place? However, if we go back to this map, like I say, we've got this giant barrow looking object here, and strangely enough, if you come further down, we find another one here. Like I say, the image is not the clearest on this Lidar. I might have to look around and get a better one. In fact, Hippie, if you're watching this video, thank you for them links. I'll check them out. One of the fascinating stories relating to Achilles, as I said, potentially this could be Achilles and Patroclus's round barrow and burial site, where there's a giant golden urn inside. I'm not going to say that it is, but given that there's absolutely no information on this, who's to say that it's not? Because it obviously hasn't been excavated. Now, Achilles, there's a number of ways in which Achilles died in the different versions of the Trojan conflict. And the one that always springs to my mind, I think I've mentioned this in the past, is the one where he goes into the gardens of Apollo after, I think it's Diomedes sends for him because he falls in love with their daughter, and obviously she tricks him. She says, like, we need to get rid of Achilles, tells Antenor, I believe, and is it Antenor and Hector, sorry, not Hector, Alexander, and they send the word. Achilles, smitten, falls for it, goes to the gardens of Apollo, the sanctuary of Apollo, and he's set upon by Hector, and I can't remember who the other person is. I want to say it's Antenor, but I don't think it is. And they, because you're not allowed to take weapons into the sanctuary, which there's a period in which there's multiple periods when the two sides have ceasefires, you know, to recover the forces and heal the wounded and build up the supplies and all this kind of stuff. There's quite a few ceasefires, and in these periods, like especially in one of them, the Trojans actually go to the Achaean camp. They're allowed to go through the gate and wander around, and it's the same the other way. You get the Achaeans, the Danans, the Argives coming to the city of Troy and taking a walk around the temples and all this kind of stuff. And it's one of these temples on the hills of Ida, or the Gog-Magog hills, where Achilles, like I say, goes to meet, thinking he's about to get perhaps a hand in marriage, only to get shafted, really. And I think it's Ajax and like Telamon or someone's with Achilles rush to him and carry him off, and then that's how Achilles dies in one account. So there's loads of different accounts. However, it's claimed that he's buried in a giant urn along with his buddy Patroclus. I'll probably leave it there, to be honest, guys. This video has probably been a bit longer than I wanted it to be. This was just the first time we've actually tried using some of these Lidar techniques, and this is something we'll be doing again in the future, and hopefully we'll learn from this process and I'll get better at it as each time we do it. Get used to the lay of the land a little bit more as well, what the features are and what we're looking for. As you can see though, there's no wonder why this area is thought of being the Great Plain. As you can see, it's the only flat land in the entire region, really, and it just happenstance that we've got all these dikes, rivers, and the amount of Bronze Age artifacts that have been found in this region. You know, I can't wait to do the archaeology video and we can explore these things a little bit further. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Stay tuned. Like I say, I'm working on this flood video that I'm hoping should be out next week. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't, and it's going to be a really good video, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, hope you have a good weekend. Catch you in the next one. Peace.